with the appropriate language to move those along if that's all right with everyone. Our choice is if we don't do it tonight, we have to meet next week and do it, so we might as well get it done while we can, unless somebody has a strong objection. So with that, any thoughts on tonight, what they heard in public?
I agree. First one, we got very strong feedback tonight and in the mail to support the warming room. So clearly there's a lot of public passion around warming room at the skating rink, and I think we should make note of that. In addition to what we heard tonight, there was a whole series of emails that we were sent copies of, and I think that should just be known to the public. The other two items...
Did everyone get a copy of those emails that were handed out? I think everyone received those emails.
They're all supporting it.
Yeah.
And then the other 2 points that I would like to observe that comments were made and not necessarily addressed. The first one was Mr. Kalishman's concern that the budget not fully reflect the 2 officers, and he is actually correct because there isn't 12 full months of 2 new officers in the budget. And so he called it smoke and mirrors, and I would object to that description. But what they did do was they decided they weren't adding them on day 1 of the fiscal year. They're rolling them in, and there's some retirements, and there's a little complexity around it. But the reality is that to keep 2 additional staff on the police force for next year, we're going to see a subsequent increase in the following year. And we all know that, but it's just the math of how and when they wanted to add them worked out. It wasn't intended to be smoke and mirrors and not put the full cost of them in there. But I think the point he was trying to make is it's not all reflected in here, and he is right about that point. Right, but it'll hit next year. And then finally, I agree with Mrs. Coe's comments about some of the things on the capital list, and I think we'll talk about that when we get to it. But I personally think that when you're borrowing money for 10 years and you're paying things back, we ought not to be doing too much studying and some of those kinds of projects, and that we ought to be carefully looking at what we're calling capital, because it ought to be there and giving us a benefit for the next 10 years. And when you're studying things, you don't even know what's going to come out of it, may or may not result in a project, it's probably premature, and there's small amounts of money. It feels like a lot of that stuff belongs more operating, and so I think that was one of the points she was making, and I think we need to find a better way to pay for it than to borrow money and bond to do some of the small stuff. And I think that was my 3 things that I heard.
Yeah.
I sort of echo what Barb is pointing out, but it seems to me that if we've got a number of these small projects, and if we're going to perhaps a little later talk about putting some of those projects into effectively the operating budget and paying cash for them, that we can alleviate some of that problem right there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Linda, anything? Or? Jeff?
Nothing additional.
Well, yeah, I thought it went well, and good presentations. There were some good questions.
I think we just add one thing. I actually have had a few personal phone calls from people in town who are very excited about the fact that we're coming in with a no tax increase budget. So I just wanted to reinforce that. People are happy about that. So thank you for doing the hard work.
Well, why don't we start off with the operating questions that we have to move forward. Those are usually easier. Now we have to formally move on 3 questions to referendum. I believe the first one relates to the Board of Selectmen budget. Second one relates to the Board of Education budget. And I guess we technically approve all the others, which add up to the 3rd question. So that's what these draft motions are, Mr. Mancini?
Right.
So help us through the math here. The first one's easy, $18,867,969. That's the Board of Selectmen budget, right? So we need a motion to approve this.
Do you want it now?
Motion? Sure.
Make a motion to approve 2015-2016 Board of Selectmen operating budget in the amount of $18,867,969.
I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Bloomfield, second it?
Yes.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Second one. Should we
You want to go more?
I make a motion to approve the 2015-2016 Board of Education operating budget in the amount of $66,453,005.
A second? Do I have-
Second.
Who seconded?
I did.
Barb? All right. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now, help me out here, Joe. The rest of them, we have to approve each one, but yet it goes up to a total of $13,257,653. So these next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 add up to that?
So down to where?
The $537,000 one, the $6,166,819, the $1,225,013, the $3,395,564, the $41,320, and the $1,891,200. Now, please clarify for me two things. Number one, on the sewer use operating budget, $3,395,000, that was not in the paper as the number, in the expense side.
Correct.
And just explain, because we had this problem, remember when we had the debt as a net number, the payment we get reimbursement from 2 other towns? I'll let you.
So, the payment from 2 other towns, included in the attached motion, passed it, wasn't on, passed.
So this gets us to the right number, it's grossed up, so we won't have a problem, and to make the auditors happy that we get the right number.
Correct.
So it ties in with the revenue item that was in the paper, and, you know, if you look in the paper, we were making money, and the only reason we made money is we didn't put the gross payment in. So this grosses it up to the right number. So it's not like we were building surplus with that budget. That's what I make people understand, that it was, the revenue from the other towns was in here, but the gross payment didn't make it in. So hence that one. Now, explain to me the one above that, the capital non-recurring number of $1,225,013. Talk to me about that.
Okay, that is a combination of the Board of Ed and town. One number that we should be aware of, so included in there, is $83,550 that is the fastest to remove. We're going through the appropriation, but I still need the okay to go ahead and project that through that. If you look at public notice, for capital non-recurring, there's 2 funding sources. One being the repayment to the general fund, one bit. And this column to the right, grants/audit, will be $83,550.
So this is giving us the authorization to spend the money, but the intention is not all of it's going through that capital non-recurring. Some of it's going to be, you'll later ask us to transfer it out of the 15 budget to pay for that.
Yes, it will still all occur in the capital non-recurring.
But we need the 83,000 has to come through that request from the 15 budget, but that's not happening in this motion.
And what grant is that, 83,000?
Not grant, it's going to be a transfer from the general.
It was part of the CNR.
Right.
Oh, it's the 1/5?
appropriations.
Oh,
Yeah, remember that they're going to have some surplus, so this will be a transfer to use from the benefit of, from another fund that they won't have to pay money. They'll now have a surplus, so we're going to use that to lower the capital non-recurring.
so it's not the 1/5, it's what Peter's saying, because he's saying something different.
Sorry.
No, I'm saying the total we're going to do, the 83,000 is the total. And then they save 16,000 in their budget by that being done that way. Okay?
And what was the total of these 6 items altogether?
13,257, 650, are we there? I think I did it on my calculator in the office, but I forgot to bring the tape, so
It's on the second.
I'm old fashioned. I see I don't have my Apple Watch on it, I can't do it.
So we read this in after we said that we approve these, we then read this into the record, the entirety.
Well, do we have to prove each one, or can we, how do we do this,
So
Joe?
you did it last year, this is how it is.
All right, so I need somebody to make a motion on the 537?
We can probably combine them into one motion as long as everybody's in support of that.
I seem to recall last year, I thought town council was going to do each one individually, so that's why.
I think
Is that what we list them individually?
Right, it
Right.
has to be listed.
We can't just combine them. So I make a motion that we approve the following items for the 2015-2016. The non-public school operating budget in the amount of $537,737. The debt retiring operating / capital budget in the amount of $6,166,819. The capital non-recurring fund budget in the amount of $1,225,013. The sewer use operating budget in the amount of $3,395,564. The residential rental properties operating budget in the amount of $41,320. And the Simsbury Farms Fund operating budget in the amount of $1,891,200.
Second.
Second by Jeff. Any discussion?
These will all go on as just one item.
One item on the ballot for the referendum, they all get rolled up, but this motion itemizes them, allows it to go forward because for the authority to spend, we need each total for the authority. Now, in some budgets, prior years, we had a problem with the detail didn't add up to the total. We don't have that problem, right? No, I mean, the detail.
Use your toes this time?
The detail in each one of these budgets, so I know a couple of years ago, we had a little issue where something didn't get added up right, so we're there. I just want to make sure our, I'm an accountant, the auditor, and you got to do everything twice, to make me happy.
I'll be that person anyway.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, these carry. Now, let's get to the good part. The capital. Now, what do we have here? You gave us a sheet. You have bond language here, and you have a sheet listing all the projects, right?
What is that second page?
Yeah, before we get to that, we have to read the resolution into the record if I recall.
I'm sorry.
So we could just start if we want, each take a paragraph.
We have to read the whole, resolution this in? All right. Somebody wants to read that in, that'd be great. Who's got a good voice?
I already paid my part.
Pursuant to Section 808 of the Town Charter, the following motions were introduced at the regular meeting of the Board of Finance on April 8, 2015. Be it resolved that the appropriation recommended and approved by the Board of Finance for the purposes of paying the expenses of the Board of Selectmen annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 shall be approved and implemented in the amount of $18,867,969. Be it resolved that the appropriation recommended and approved by the Board of Finance for the purposes of paying the expenses of the Board of Education annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 shall be approved and implemented in the amount of $66,453,005. Be it resolved that the appropriation recommended and approved by the Board of Finance for the purposes of paying the expenses of sewer use fund, sewer treatment plant, residential rental properties, Simsbury Farm special programs, non-public schools, debt retirement, and capital non-recurring annual budgets for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 shall be approved and implemented in the amount of $13,257,653. In accordance with Section 406, automatic referendum, and 808, duties of the Board of Finance on the budget of the Charter, the recommended operating budgets will be submitted to a referendum in the following forms. Someone do the questions?
Questions for referendum ballot. Shall the appropriation recommended and approved by the Board of Finance for the purposes of paying of the Board of Selectmen annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 be approved and implemented in the amount of $18,867,969. 2, shall the appropriation recommended and approved by the Board of Finance for the purposes of paying the expenses of the Board of Education annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 be approved and implemented in the amount of $66,453,005. Shall the appropriation recommended and approved by the Board of Finance for the purposes of paying the expenses of sewer use fund, sewer treatment plant, residential rental properties, Simsbury Farm special programs, non-public schools, debt retirement, capital non-recurring annual budgets for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 be approved and implemented in the amount of $13,257,653.
I need to amend the last resolution where totaling the $13,257,000. I want to go ahead and just list out the funds again because we're missing capital. So Be it resolved that the appropriation recommended and approved by the Board of Finance for the purposes of paying the expenses of the sewer use fund, residential renter properties, Simsbury Farm special programs, non-public schools, debt retirement / capital, and capital non-recurring annual budgets for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 shall be approved and implemented in the amount of $13,257,653.
Second as amended.
Thank you. Yeah, we have to get that consistent language, otherwise we've got inconsistent language in a couple spots, so don't want to be confused. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries. The resolution and the referendum ballot questions carry forward. So we've done that part. Thank you for catching the pace, Jeff. Appreciated it. Now, on the capital. Now you can see we have a fair amount of projects, and there's a lot of bond language. Do you want to talk in total about the capital before we get down to the language and approvals? Does that sound reasonable if we just kind of give people's thoughts? And I know some people have some thoughts on it. Barb, you express some thoughts.
I'll give you my first proposal.
Sure.
The Board of Education projects are clear and they should all be bonded. There's 3 of them and they're large. The water pollution control projects, none of which are bonded, they all come out of the sewer fund, so no questions on that grouping. And so now we're into the town projects. In the importance of transparency of what people vote on, it's very difficult to manage these projects when you put too much in one, and I understand the purposes and why things were broken out. But I also am balancing that with the concept of not making sure that the voters have the opportunity to vote on as much as possible, and it doesn't look like we're dividing things so that it doesn't go to the voters in an appropriate way. Because of that, I would just recommend that we look at it as Simsbury, it's Simsbury Farms. It's basically Park and Rec projects for next year. There's 2 of them. Simsbury Farms is actually part in both of them, but there's other things in one of them. One is $1.1 million and the other one is $508,000. And I would just recommend, for the purposes of the town vote, we let the voters see the full amount of both and call it the Park and Rec improvement projects and group them together. So it would be $1,608,000. And then if you want to manage them separately, when you go to do the projects, that would be up to you and how you manage them. But at least then, for the appearance of transparency to the voters, we've given them all the Park and Rec stuff together, and all the Simsbury Farm stuff is in there, so they can't argue part of it's missing.
Why don't we just hear, because I guess it was explained to us the other night, but maybe some of us weren't listening as well as others. So why don't you, Jeff, perhaps you could just explain why he was presenting this too, so I can get an understanding.
Sure. Well, I think the primary reason is, number one, that this is how the projects were conceived, and they actually have been carried forward in the capital program. These are not new projects in the first year. So people understand these projects were marching forward.
How long have they been in the capital plan?
I can't say with certainty, but at least I'd say at least 2 years.
5 years?
They have been out here.
Okay. So they've been presented this way for 5 years now?
Right. And I think the other reason we tried to mention in the last finance meeting is it's logical. They are separate in the state in some respects. Simsbury Farm stuff is pretty much together in one project. All other projects, park improvements are actually in the other project.
So the park improvements are not at Simsbury Farms.
I thought the tennis was at Simsbury Farms.
Tennis, I believe tennis was the only one.
Tennis was in multiple places.
There are 2 separate projects with the tennis courts, which was brought up because there were some economies of scale and the benefit of doing the 2 of them. I think that's how they.
So you have tennis at Simsbury Farm and tennis at somewhere else lumped together, and then you have all the other.
Right.
So, I can understand you. I'm fine with keeping them separate, doesn't matter.
I have no problem keeping them separate. I mean, Barb's point on it, for transparency, I think it's, I guess I didn't realize it'd been on the list for 5 years listed this way, so shame on us for not paying attention sooner and asking that question. But I don't think we're deceiving anyone by keeping them separate. I don't think the intent is to take a project and bifurcate it to make it
Oh,
smaller.
yeah, I don't think that either. I just
Yeah.
think the voters have a better say
Yeah.
if they get to vote on 1,600,000 instead of the million.
And then another thing is, if we did the charter a little better, is we're kind of in Never Land, the 1 to
Right,
2%.
exactly.
In the old days, we did 2%.
It was
So
much
even
easier.
combined, it wouldn't have gone before.
Right.
So, I mean, because we had a little issue with the way the last charter got written, we're kind of stuck on this one, which isn't bad, the 1%.
Peter,
Yes.
I would say our board of selectmen did consider this, and it's a great point you raised, Barbara. We decided not to combine them because they have been kept separate, and we thought it was actually more transparent, but sometimes when we lump things together, it gets more confusing to the voters, and we didn't do it. This is actually more transparent from our perspective. I completely understand your perspective, and it's not a crazy perspective.
Well, if they were done in 2 separate years,
Correct.
they would definitely, it's
Oh, yeah.
not like an integrated
And most
project
of,
that has to be all
no,
done.
and it's nice that they weren't integrated to the extent they could. We got it from looking at the scales, we saw a little part and
It's
another
a different
part.
contract.
Right, and it's a different contract, different engineering specifications, different needs, different materials. That's why they were separate.
All right, any other projects that we have issues or descriptions, or, I know there's some smaller ones. that
Yeah, the smaller
heard
ones
some
that I would
comments.
recommend finding a different way rather than borrowing money are 57,000 for the Leotard planning from Route 10, 50,000 for the municipal building space planning. It's called renovations, but we're not buying the renovations, we're doing space planning. $30,000 for dam evaluations, and the 28,000 for the project planning fund. That all of those be found a way to be paid for in a current year rather than paying for them over the next 10.
Now, Joe, explain to me, you know, when we have a capital debt retirement / capital budget of $6,166,000. Now, that number is the same as a year ago, but unlike a year ago when we didn't do any bonding, we knew exactly what the number was. We kept it to the pure debt service. This, when we do the debt service, after we issue the next bond and do refinancing, we're probably going to spend less.
Correct. So
How much do you think we're going to spend less?
$175,000 less. Expect all your debt service for next year to be over $6 million. We held it constant with the assumption that some of the difference between what you plan and what you pay in debt service can be exactly what you that by departments that $175,000.
Exactly.
So, but I mean, I asked you the question is, why do we have to put bond language in if we're going to pay the 16 budget? And the answer is,
The bond council says
why?
Yeah, why? I don't buy that. Why are we giving permission to bond it if we don't intend to?
I mean,
I mean, you told me that she said that
Drew Plank said, yes, that
we could always pay it.
you can always pay for it right out of cash. Now, when it comes to you just put a language out there that gives you flexibility.
So you could go up to that amount, but you don't have to do
I
that.
mean, here's the issue we have. Let's say we get a refinancing where we save $250,000, because we don't know, interest rates change. It depends on when you hit market. You know, every week, things are changing. And we could end up with a windfall, and I guess the question is, we have they can only spend so much money between debt service or cash, so much. So if we get a windfall of the debt service, then maybe we can even pay for more projects. And I don't think, you know, I'm concerned about bond language because I don't like to put the authorization out there if we don't have to. But as long as putting it out there and the intent is to pay for it in the 16 budget, not the 15, the 16 budget. I know last year we paid for it in the current year's budget. We did like 900 and some odd thousand, but that was an extraordinary year and we did that. This way, we could pay for it in the 16 budget because if we authorize it out of surplus, it goes against our financial this year. And I don't think we want to do that. I think we want to keep our options open there, so to speak. We can always decide to even use some of 15 to pay for more capital. So I guess what I've been told is, even if we want to use for 16 and 15, even though we put bond language on, it doesn't stop us from paying for cash and hence lowering the amount we have to borrow in the future.
And that's a decision we can make either later this year,
Yes.
and put it against 15, or
16.
roll it into 16 and
Right.
pay it next year.
Because we're going to bond the end of this month, we'll know. We'll have notice by the end of
Over
the
the next 5 weeks.
5 weeks. We'll know exactly what we have.
So I go back to why is bond council telling us that we have to approve bond language to say it can be bonded? Since we,
Lawyer Joe is like maximum.
flexibility, but we don't really, why do we need to give them that for these?
Because I
Right.
haven't bonded it. So I don't know whether or not we say 170, 250, 90, it's in that range, and you literally fluctuate that much with 40%.
But
I think what we're all saying is, we don't really want to bond this, we're gonna pay for it some other way, but, you know, I don't think it hurts to
We
bond.
want the flexibility
Right.
to have all the options.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, but I think Barbara's saying she doesn't
I
want
don't.
that flexibility.
Right, I don't want us
She
to
doesn't
fall back
want
and
us to
bond
be
these over
bonded.
10 years
Yeah.
Well, I guess
because we created. the
I don't think
ability.
we're gonna bond this for 10 years.
I guess I want to have the flexibility that, I mean, interest rates are historically very low. We've talked about kind of bang for our buck, and I agree with Barbara, we want to take cash where we can, but I also recall, maybe it was in the tape, the meeting that I unfortunately had to miss, or the prior meeting, but I thought that we talked about typically looking at the planning analysis and rolling that into the actual project as well. So I know, theoretically or philosophically, I guess you would like to have this in the operating budget, but I also thought I heard that when you're planning for a longer-term capital improvement, they often roll in the planning costs associated with that capital improvement, because it is something that goes beyond typically the day-to-day work that people are doing.
So we have a valid project, we've done the planning, we pay for it, we can then roll it in and bond if we have the bond
Right,
rate.
if we decide to go that
That
route.
was the idea behind it.
Okay.
And it was an attempt on our part to meet your request that we do better planning and that we do more accurate numbers earlier.
Yeah, I agree with that, because sometimes those numbers change dramatically, and the better numbers we have, the easier it is to
It's still
roll
not
the
going to
right
be
plan.
perfect, but this will enable us to do better.
Better is always good. First, perfection's hard to get.
I
So,
would just
Linda.
say that, obviously we're not going to decide this today, but over the long term, it would be helpful to have some guidelines about what can be included in capital and what should be included in operating expenses. I think that's a valid point, and I'm not sure what the right answer is. I mean, I think we would all say, you're building a new house. the
Well,
cost
these
of
are defined by
architect is-
statute.
I mean, also bond council,
It's a state statute that says.
bond council won't let you put bond language in on something that you shouldn't bond,
But you can't,
that you should not bond. Bond council will
will
not
not let
allow
you,
that.
they'll pick it out
Okay,
and
so
say.
so their definition and the statutory definition of capital includes planning. That's what you're saying. All right.
Yeah, we made it.
Let's go with that.
Yeah, they will not put their name on anything if 'cause they're the ones that now take the liability if something can't get bonded. So trust me, they won't put their name out there.
The challenge that I always have is, you don't know when we're spending this money right now, whether it'll ever turn into a capital project. And while we have good intentions right now in all of this, that it will, to pay for 10 years to think about and study something, to decide if we're going to do it, just feels wrong to me. And so I know that planning can be, but it's one thing if you're planning the high school and we are doing the high school renovation like we did, all that planning went into it, that made perfect sense. But some of these, it's just, they're very squishy right now.
Understood.
One
but
other question
give us
here.
flexibility, I think.
One other question, I asked a question on the generator. Please tell me what the total number is, because we had 80,
160,000, although 80,000 on our side, 80,000 on the street.
so it is 106.
Correct, first draft.
Yeah, because original bond language had 40s and lots of
Yeah,
crazy numbers.
Notice that the sewer one, for
Yeah.
some reason, when I do 44.
Okay. So we have it 80 and 80, so it's 160 we're going to spend. So the deal is 80 out of the town, and the sewer operating fund playing 80
Yes,
out of their reserve.
yes.
And actually, back to Barb's point, for Barb, with the planning, I think, $20,000 project planning fund. I'm never going to work on that, but I do like the idea of actually having the money out there with the thought that there is a downstream project that can happen and wrapping it up. How it's more of an engineering difference, but I will not bond $40,000 for 10 years for a project that is not where I come back to you guys and say, guys, this project didn't happen. We appropriate money for it, or there's obviously some maintenance that has to go on.
But I think even if we spend the 28, just to pick on the one you've done, and we spent it out of cash, there's no reason to go borrow that same money in a future year. We've already spent it and it's been absorbed. So I don't necessarily think you need to roll it when you bond. So you're going to do the big project and the big project's $1 million. I don't think you need to wrap your 28 into your $1 million and borrow the money at that point and pay it over 10 years when you've already sunk the money. So I don't know, I just think the planning phase, unless it's a really big project, really shouldn't be in the capital project. Even though it can be, I understand that.
Any other concerns people have or any questions?
I guess just philosophically, you know, you're looking at projects that have a longer lifespan, and I think when you're looking at tax burdens, to the extent that you can, you want to spread it over the users, and so there's certain items where I do think over a period, it makes more sense to wrap it in. I mean, if the amount were larger than 28,000, I'm sure we wouldn't be having this discussion. But
Now, Joe, question here. What, this schedule here that shows everything, you know, we have a bond language for each project, and then we have this recap schedule. What does that mean?
Just trying to make sure that people understand all the projects that are listed behind.
Right.
So that it's out in front.
Right.
You just wanted to put the every single project that was out there, so that we understood what we're reading. And if you choose not to read the language that's attached, just so I can enter it into the minutes.
Can we not read the language? I mean, we've all read every...
Read this first paragraph.
oh, really?
On motion to be made, that's right, that's lawyers.
That's the best news I heard all night.
So the only
really?
thing I would ask is that we break out the ones that I'm going to vote against, so I don't have to vote against the entire list. No, there's 4 of them that I think shouldn't be done the way they're listed, and I don't want to have to vote against the whole thing because we combined them.
I got 5.
You got 5, what's your 5th?
The fifth one is the one, 45,000 for the town.
Town hall site and safety.
Site planning, safety, whatever it is.
Well, that's also planning.
That's
Somebody want to make a
planning,
motion for the
Okay.
whole thing, or somebody want to make a motion for it? the
So
way
you have
Bart-
210.
So just before we vote, Peter, it's your intention and your intention that actually those 5 things will be paid for with cash and not bond.
Yes.
All possible.
That makes a difference.
Yeah, because I
Yeah,
agree with that.
trust me, I don't want to bond small numbers. I don't think it's,
I think we're all.
I think we'll get there. It's just, I mean, you even got bond premiums, you got many ways to pay for that. There's going to be a lot of, Joe's got a lot of, we got a lot of money already in there, we can pay for stuff like that. So I have total confidence that we'll get paid for it. But we're just trying to move the language along so we can pay for it.
So, Barb, just so I understand, which you want broken out, so the 2 separate motions?
I agree with your other one. It's 57, 50, 57 is the 4th one down.
Just everything is under 100,000, basically.
Oh,
for the
no,
80.
except for the 80, because the 80 is part of a 160 bigger project.
And
Yeah,
actual-
okay.
So you're okay with 80?
Yeah.
210,000.
Exactly.
You're not doing that, you're okay.
57.
These are the ones,
30.
So we can
45 and 28.
read this without those, and then read a separate list with those, of those,
So we read the top motion
and then all the projects except.
and then read the projects, right?
Okay, so,
Somebody wants to make that motion?
on,
Yes.
oh, go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's say upon motion duly made, what am I reading here?
So just exclude those 5, and then you're going to have to do 5 separate motions on each of those.
Okay, so do we first have to make a motion, though, to waive the text of the resolutions? Do we first have to make a motion?
Yeah, I make a
to
motion that we waive
text of the resolutions?
reading of the full text of the resolution.
I
Second.
second that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we're
Now.
beautiful. Now we're making progress. So now we have to make a motion on,
Jeff's going to do it.
I'm not sure, am I making a motion, am I basically introducing a resolution to fund these, but rather go through the text on delineating each of these items? I want to make sure we're doing this correctly.
you have to read into the minutes of the full text of the resolution set out below was waived.
Right.
Copies of the resolutions having been made available to those in attendance and is recorded in those records immediately preceding these minutes. And then I assume we have to list specifically all these projects that we're voting on.
Correct.
So be it resolved, then I
It's just
think
grammar of the sentences.
that the Board of Finance recommends out of Simsbury appropriate
And then read those.
$1,100,000 for improvements to Simsbury Farms, Rink and Pool, $508,000 for park improvements, $145,000 for open space planning and improvements, $375,000 for the salt shed replacement, $280,000 for the Public Works Complex infrastructure improvements. Were we good with $80,000 for the portable generator infrastructure, and $175,000 for various drainage improvements?
Right, plus you gotta keep going.
Are we doing one
Yep,
conceptual?
yep, we're doing all.
Even though, that come out all day. $371,000 in sewer main extensions, $260,000 for the inline grinder and screen replacement, $135,000 for the Hot Meadow Center area sewer repairs, $50,000 for the West Mountain Road area sewer interceptor design, $80,000 for the portable generator, and $72,000 for the portable 6-inch dry climb pump. And those are water pollution control projects, the last 6. And then for Board of Education projects, $200,000 for the district network infrastructure, $2,150,000 for the climate control phase 1 through 7 buildings project, and $770,000 for the central school roof replacement, for a total proposed capital improvement project amount of,
You're gonna have to minus,
do you have the amount?
We're taking off 210.
Is that the total?
Yep.
Okay, of $6,751,000.
Second.
Good. Now, these are, by doing this, we're now, all these resolutions are going to be passed. So has everyone reviewed the resolution? Is
Yes.
that what that means, Joe, right? The resolutions are passed. So, except for the ones we excluded. So in these resolutions, our bond language on the first 1, 2, 3,
Everything except the,
all the way down to the sewer, and then you go to the sewer, is coming out of the sewer use fund,
yep,
they say?
yep.
They say appropriate from sewer use fund. They say it up in the second line.
What number did you guys got?
6751.
6751. We took 10, yeah, we haven't passed it, we're discussing the motion on the table. We took 210 out. 165, we added in the 45. So, okay.
Okay. And the bonding, now how about the bond, the 10-year bonds, we'll do that separate? Or is that, the bonds, when we say we do 10-year bonds?
Generally,
Okay.
So
But that's not part of this motion.
I can amend my resolution if you want to state that the appropriation will be in the form of 10-year bonds.
Bonds not to exceed 10 years.
Bonds not to exceed 10
That
years.
sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Great. Then you'll,
Second.
okay. All those in favor?
Can we do discussion?
Sure.
So, I know we're truncating our minutes lately. I just want to make sure, I still personally would like to request that the Board of Selectmen consider, for the purposes of voting at the town budget, not breaking out the $1,000,001 and the 508 and combining park improvements with the Simsbury Farms Rink and Pool improvements all into one project. I want to make sure the minutes at least say that.
Let's fight back to when that can do it.
Well, I don't know that that's our decision, is it? Isn't it their decision?
Well, I think it have to come back to
I
us. It would have to
I mean, if you
come
want to
back.
vote on that, I don't think this vote will change what we do there. We can vote on that separate, if you want.
It'll come back to us.
We'll come back.
If they move to do that, it'll come back to us. There's already been discussion to do it.
We did vote, we voted to keep them separate, but if you would like us to make a formal request pass this, we consider the meeting on Monday.
Well, I think Jeff has made a good point. These projects that have been, we've been working on various aspects of these projects for some time. There's precedent already for keeping them separate.
I have no problem with it separate based on what I've heard.
Based on the explanations that were given, I don't have a problem.
So, we're all set to vote on these projects as listed in the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, take care. Now, let's go to round two here. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have to do each one separately? All right. So-
Peter, would it be out of order for me to make a motion that we combine those two and let you guys all vote me down?
If you want to make a motion, I'll entertain it.
That way it gets on the record.
All right?
I'd like to make a motion that we request that the Board of Selectmen combine the Simsbury Farms rink pool improvements with the park improvements for the purposes of allowing the residents of the town of Simsbury to be able to vote on all of the park and rec projects as one item.
Do I hear a second?
Second for discussion purposes.
Which one do you?
It's your decision, I don't know how to make a second.
Do I hear a second?
Second for discussion.
All right, we've discussed it.
We have.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. Nays have it. Motion fails. All right, now let's go. We got to go with the 57,000. We to go. We talk. Cleaning. Group 10.
Can we do all of these five?
Yes.
Yes.
Can we?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So be it resolved that
Excellent.
the Board of Finance recommends the town of Simsbury appropriate $57,000 for the Weatog Planning Route 10 and code preparation work, $50,000 for the municipal building renovations, $30,000 for dam evaluation and repairs, $45,000 for town hall site and safety improvements, and $28,000 for project planning fund.
Second.
Discussion.
Some of these, for example, I think, like the dam evaluations and repairs, I thought I heard Jeff say that some of this is pursuant to new legislation. I mean, so it's relatively new. It's something that I couldn't have even really anticipated through an operating budget. So I mean, I do think this is entirely appropriate. I think having the flexibility to pay it through bonding or with cash at some point is also we've discussed and is available to us. So.
I think we'll know after the bond issue what we have to pay through there, and if we have to do it out of the 15 budget, we'll pay the balance out of there. We'll have enough flexibility there to resolve all this, I think.
But I do agree with doing it this way because we do not want to do the 2016 budget.
Okay. All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Nay.
Any opposed? One opposed, all right. Motion carries. All right,
Motion to adjourn?
so
We're
moved.
just-
Second?
I'll make a
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn, thank you.
adjourned.
Excellent.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.